All right, for the recording, welcome back. We are ACI Course 9, Class 3. It is June 15th, 2025. Let's gather our minds here as we usually do. Please bring your attention to your breath until you hear from me again. Now bring to mind that being who for you is a manifestation of ultimate love, ultimate compassion, ultimate wisdom, and see them here with you. They are gazing at you with their unconditional love for you. Smiling at you with their holy great compassion. Their wisdom radiating from them. That beautiful golden glow encompassing you in its light. And then we hear them say, bring to mind someone you know who's hurting in some way. Feel how much you would like to be able to help them. Recognize how the worldly ways we try fall short. How wonderful it will be when we can also help them in some deep and ultimate way, a way through which they will go on to stop their distress forever. Deep down, we know this is possible. Learning about emptiness and karma, we glimpse how it's possible. We even glimpse that we could do it. And so I invite you to grow that wish into a longing, and that longing into an intention. And that intention into a determination. Then turn your mind back to your precious holy being. We know that they know what we need to know, what we need to learn yet, what we need to do yet, to become one who can help this other in this deep and ultimate way. And so we ask them, please teach us that. And they are so happy that we've asked. Of course, they agree. Our gratitude arises. We want to offer them something exquisite. And so we think of the perfect world they are teaching us how to create. We imagine we can hold it in our hands, and we offer it to them, following it with our promise to practice what they teach us, using our refuge prayer to make our promise. Here is the great earth, filled with fragrant incense and covered with the blanket of flowers. The great mountain, 4 lands, wearing the jewel of the sun and the moon. In my mind, I make them the paradise of a Buddha and offer it all to you. By this deed, may every living being experience the pure world. Idam Guru Ratna Mandalakam Niryatayami. I go for refuge until I am enlightened to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the highest community. Through the merit that I do in sharing this class and the rest, may we reach enlightenment for the sake of every other being. I go for refuge until I am enlightened to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the highest community. Through the merit that I do in sharing this class and the rest, may we reach Buddhahood for the sake of every living being. I go for refuge until I am enlightened to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the highest community. Through the merit that I do in sharing this class and the rest, may all beings reach their total awakening for the benefit of every single other. Last class, we reviewed the something wrong there. Go back here. Testing, testing. Now, does it work? Yes, no, yes, no. Okay. So last class, we looked at the different chapters in Choni Lama's commentary to the Vinaya Sutra text. And in that, it included the instructions about drawing the wheel of life, and be sure you put that in your temple foyer. I'm not going to go over the quiz. This class, we are looking at Jetsun Kappa's text called the Dulwa Gyatso Ningpo, the essence of the ocean of discipline, which is his commentary on not just the Vinaya Sutra, but the whole Vinaya scripture is covered in his big text. We're going to spend a couple of classes on it. No, not nearly enough to cover it in detail, but we'll get the essence of the essence. His opening lines, excuse me, Or om delek your sugir cheek. Om delek sugir cheek. There's quite a bit of Tibetan in this class. Not that you need to know it, but for the seed planting to contribute to the language staying in our world, particularly the language of this text. So first thing Jetsun Kappa says is Om Delek Sugir Chik. Om is a Sanskrit word that they don't translate. They just use Om. Geshe Michael Lama Christie, every time they use Om, they go, Om means Om, and they go right by. But Om means body, speech, mind of a Buddha. The sound Om is that vibration of a totally enlightened being. The Om is made up of 3 different sounds all rolled into one. The A, U, the important part is that within that vibration is held the pure body of enlightened being, their paradise body and emanation body. I like using the word their paradise being and emanation being. It helps my mind think of it in a less solid way than body. That pure body is the body as it appears to other Buddhas in paradises and as it appears to beings who are in need. How it appears to them, it sees itself appearing in a certain way, and the one to whom they are appearing, they see them appearing in the way according to their seeds. And it is the emanation of that enlightened being. That vibe also holds pure speech, the pure speech of enlightened being. Those emanations can't do anything for us except teach us. So they teach us, they can teach us in their actions, but it really comes down to teaching verbally. They need speech. It's through their speech that we learn what we need to learn. And then their pure mind is a Buddha's omniscient mind, directly experiencing all existing things, how they appear and how they aren't, meaning their emptiness, directly perceiving both. And technically, they're perceiving how things appear to them, and they're perceiving how things appear to everybody else as well. And that mind includes the emptiness of themselves and the emptiness of all aspects of themselves, all rolled into that pure mind. And all of that's rolled into the word Om. And when we say it, we are essentially calling upon those holy beings. Like we're reaching out for their attention. Now, an omniscient being doesn't need us to reach out for their attention. They're aware of us all the time. But we can think of it as, one face in a sea of zillions, Or we can stand out in the crowd, Lord Buddha, Lord Buddha, Lord Buddha, look at me. Hello, hello. That's what Om does. So he starts out pointing out these holy good qualities of enlightened being as the first word in his quintessential book on Vinaya, on how to become one, right? The foundation of becoming one. Then Delek Sur Gyurchik. Altogether, it says, may all living beings achieve temporary happiness and permanent Buddhahood. And when we break it down, the day means happiness and lek means goodness. And so the day meaning happiness can mean the happiness of closing the doors to lesser rebirth. And the lek can mean that happiness and the goodness of reaching nirvana. If that's our goal, if that's our belief that that's the highest that we can achieve. If our belief is the highest I can achieve is Buddhahood, then the day refers to reaching nirvana, the happiness of reaching nirvana, which of course includes closing the door to lesser rebirth. And the lek, the goodness, refers to going beyond nirvana and reaching total Buddhahood. The difference being the omniscient state of mind that's propelled or created by that great compassion that we cultivate, that shifts the deeds that we do that would have helped us reach nirvana are now deeds that we're doing to help us reach Buddhahood, reaching nirvana on the way, just not as our goal. So Om Delek means Buddhas, may all beings have happiness and goodness. May they all reach all of that. Close the door to lesser rebirth, reach their nirvana, reach their Buddhahood. Sugirchik means let it be so. So may all living beings achieve temporary happiness and permanent Buddhahood. And then he goes on to state his subject matter, what he's going to share with all those beings through which they can do that. Sotargi Dompa. Sotar means pratimoksha, though there it is up there. Pratimoksha is the Sanskrit. Sotar is the Tibetan. So means individual. Tar means freedom or liberation. The moksha is liberation. Prati is individual. So the individual the vows of individual freedom. Dompa meaning vows. Freedom actually is another code word for reaching nirvana. So nirvana is that state where we are incapable of having an upset state of mind, incapable of the slightest mental affliction, no matter what experience is happening. So nirvana does not mean nothing will ever go wrong. There won't be another pain. But it does mean there'll be no more suffering from whatever that situation is. No more automatic, upset state of mind in the slightest. Do you remember the King of Kalinka's story? And the yogi's getting his body all cut up and he's just loving the king more and more. Right? It's like, no, that can't be possible. But that's a state of mind where, because of wisdom, having seen emptiness directly, we've gone on to weed out or damage the seeds of mental affliction so much that they cannot ripen anymore, no matter what. We can reach nirvana and our bodies will look the same. And our life will probably go on pretty much the same as it had been leading up to that. We can have this state of mind that is free of mental afflictions no matter what, and still have the karma for this body wearing out and going to end. There's this phrase, pain is inevitable, suffering is optional. It's that idea, not by way of just deciding we're not going to suffer, but by weeding out and damaging the seeds of the blame factor that makes us upset when something unpleasant happens. So the subject of Vinaya is these individual vows of freedom. And why are they called individual vows of freedom? And Nilcha Dharma Bhadra, he gives us this explanation. He says they're called individual freedom vows because those individuals who keep them reach freedom. Those who don't keep them don't reach freedom. There he goes again, giving a definition and using the words of the thing to be defined in his definition. So it's not really a definition, it's an explanation. It's a personal journey, a personal effort. The way these vowed behaviors work, only we can apply them. Only we can make them effective. And then we personally benefit. It would just me, not meaning they're somehow lesser, but our personal responsibility and our personal result, which means when we have individual freedom vows, our behavior is our responsibility. Somebody else who may or may not have individual freedom vows, they are not your responsibility. But wait, they are, because they're my seeds ripening. Yes, your responsibility is for how you interact with them. Your responsibility isn't to make them react to you in the way you think they should. Do you see? If they ask you for help, that's a different thing. But personal, individual freedom vows, it works on us for us to reach nirvana. Even as a bodhisattva, oh, I'm not even interested in nirvana. I want to become total Buddha for the sake of all sentient beings. So everything I'm going to do is for all sentient beings. we really won't have the staying power at that level if we haven't stepped up the rung of the ladder of recognizing that the personal individual freedom vows are what launch us into our bodhisattva career. We skipping grades is not beneficial. Now, right, we can go pretty swiftly through elementary school pratimoksha vows and spend more time in high school with our bodhisattva vows. But we need to really master our pratimoksha vows in order for the behaviors that we do in our bodhisattva vows to be sustainable, right? To have the power to work in the way they're supposed to work. Right. So Je Tsongkhapa gives us another definition of Sotarki Dompa or Pratimoksha. And it's here. Nenjung Sampa Gyujin A Shennu Shidang Chepa La Dokpa. Nenjun Sampe Gyujin A Shennu Shidang Chepa La Dokpa. Yeah. Yenjun means renunciation. Sampe is motivation. Gyujine means the reason why, which sounds redundant, but the reason why is referring to something other than our motivation. Shenyu is hurting others. Shidong Chepa means along with the basis. And Le Dokpa means refraining from. So these individual freedom vows, they are the refraining from hurting others and from the basis, the Gyujane Shidong Chepa, the basis of hurting others. And doing so for the reason of renunciation. So renunciation, we remember, is everything just goes wrong. What's wrong with this picture? Nothing goes right. Things are either outright pain or the pain of change. And even when everything's going great, somebody dies, right? And one of these days, it's going to be this one. So when we finally face the fact that nothing can go right, nothing can go the way we want it to in this lifetime, we finally get some level of renunciation. If we have the next thought, there's got to be an answer. Right? We could come to that conclusion and be desperately hopeless and just do something unfortunate, right? And hurt ourselves trying to avoid it. Or we can have a little like click in our brain that goes, maybe somebody knows, maybe somebody knows what's wrong here and can show me or can teach me. And we've all had the goodness ripen that we heard the pen thing and we had the goodness to hear it and something clicked in our heart. Oh my gosh, there's something in there that's really important because it doesn't happen to everybody. You can hear the pen and it's like, okay, fine. And nothing changes. So the renunciation is triggered by recognizing nothing can go right. And then what it triggers is a search for answers. And then when we find something, we then explore what we've found And hopefully we can show ourselves in some way that that's the path for us. And at some point we stop searching and we've found the path for us. I'll be so bold to say, this is the path we've found. Not that you're locked into it, of course, but many people have studied ACI and they're on doing other things, right? No judgment going on. So once we have a renunciation in this tradition, and we find someone who's teaching about how our existence is so broken and what to do about it, we will quickly meet these teachings on karma and its consequences. And then we swiftly meet the teachings on vowed morality, right? Not just morality, but vowed morality. And morality, regardless of vowed or not, is at the first level choosing behaviors to avoid harming others in obvious ways and in more and more subtle ways. And we would think that that would be obvious what we need to do to stop harming others. But there's so many ways that we both intentionally and unintentionally do harm to another that it's really helpful to have a instruction manual for what to avoid, and then have a plan for what to do instead. Because if we're faced with some situation that we're going to avoid yelling back, but I don't know what to do, right? It's like we'll fall back into the habit because we don't have any other option. So our guidelines of the Vinaya is what to avoid and ideas about what to do instead. And the beauty of the what to do instead is that we get to be creative in our own understanding and our own planning of what it means to do the opposite behavior. Okay. So this refraining from hurting others and their basis of hurting others, the hurting others is referring to the vows that will teach us about avoiding actions of body and speech. And we said last class that Vinaya is really about avoiding those 7 and their friends, which is all the other things we do because of them. But here it points out that there are underlying factors that influence us even doing those actions of body and speech. And those factors are the basis upon which our behavior of harming others happen or are propelled. And the basis there then is actually the other 3 of the 10 non-virtues, the coveting, ill will, and wrong view, and all the nuances of what those 3 mean. So it isn't that our individual freedom vows aren't addressing our mental state at all. The vowed behaviors are not addressing the mental state, but we'll see clearly that it's the shift in the coveting, ill will, and wrong view that will propel our ability to change the habits of the killing, stealing, sexual misconduct, etc. Right? So we are going to be dealing with all 10 of those non-virtues and all the rest that make up the 84,000 mental afflictions that we are creating the causes to stop perpetuating. So Vinaya level is motivated by our own personal need. Desire is not strong enough. Our own personal determination to stop our own suffering. And we need that foundation, strong foundation. And that's renunciation. I'm going to stop this suffering. Okay. All right. So when we actually attend a ceremony where vows are being given, this must be our motivation. It must be like bright and alert in our state of mind as we're repeating what we need to repeat while we are receiving those vows. Is this fed up with worldly life? Our renunciation strong? And this determination to change ourselves, our own behavior, in order to break the cycle, in order to stop replanting the seeds that perpetuate my own suffering at the Vinaya level, which perpetuates everybody's suffering, of course. The scripture says that in olden days, people might choose to take ordination in order to escape their worldly life, in the sense of, oh, they had a whole bunch of debt and it didn't look like there was anything that they could do to escape that debt. But if they're accepted into the monastery, they're no longer responsible, right? You take your monastic vows and that's not yours anymore. Some want to get out of, some difficult family life situation. Some just want a free place to live. Yeah, it's not really free in the end, right? You got to work hard. But wrongly motivated taking of Vinaya vows makes the vows not actually take. And maybe you think you have your vows, but we're not going to get the same result. Even if that person, is a really, really good monk, until they clear up their motivation for getting their vows, they don't have the vows the way they thought. So without this motivation of renunciation, these things called vows won't come on. The light switch, right? The Lama will flip the light switch and the light won't come on. How do you know? Not sure. Nowadays, when we take our pratimoksha vows, whether they're especially ordained vows, there isn't a monastery that you move into and you don't get taken care of by the monastery for forever after. So that kind of motivation is sort of off the hook anymore. But when people take their ordained vows now, I don't know, maybe their motivation was they get to look special because they shave their head and put on those robes. Or maybe they'll be the special favorite of the Lama if they're in with a group. Or maybe it's to, I don't know, how, get some kind of respect from other people. That it's our own mind, of course, that knows its own motivation. Nobody's gonna sit you down and check you out. The abbot might quiz you, but it's really our own state of mind in our choice to take these vows. The advantage of doing so is bringing ourselves closer to that state of freedom from mental affliction forever than we would otherwise get by just following those avoiding harming others behaviors. The power of having vows to do so is so much greater. All right. Without that strong motivation, we'll lose interest. We'll stop trying. Then we'll do something that actually breaks them, even if we had them. It's still a possibility, even when we do have them, that we get complacent. All right. Okay. So Jessamkapa goes on to list the 6 categories that explain the individual freedom vows. And it will include this section of his book. It's a long section. It's gonna include like everything we need to know about vows. And he gives them to us at the beginning in this just one long sentence. So this is all one long sentence. I'll show you. I separated it so that we could see the different pieces of it. So he says the 6 categories that I will explain to you are no dong, ni rabje dong, sosoi nunzin, gewe den, tongwe gyu dong benyan. So there should be 6 there. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Yeah, I did it right. So no means their basic nature. So he will describe to us the basic nature of vows. Second category is the categories of vows, the different kinds that there are. Not meaning within each category there are multiple vows, but each category. We'll go through them. Sosoi nunzin means the individual sets. So the sosoi, we get sosokewo. We hear that, somebody who's not seen emptiness directly yet, the individual who's not here. This means the individual sets of vows. Within the categories, there are different groupings of vows. And then gewe, where is it? Gewe den is gewe means to arise born, that like the basis from which the vows are born, the basis upon which they come about. And dongwe gyu, how they are lost. And penyon, the benefits of keeping them. And in listing these 6, there must be something else he says that I don't have the Tibetan for, where he pledges to complete his work, which is characteristic of a Tibetan commentary. Is at the beginning, they tell you what they're going to do. They tell you why they're going to do it and the advantage of us reading it, studying it. And then they say, and I'm going to finish it or die trying, something like that. And so he makes this pledge to us. And he starts with describing the basic nature of pratimoksha vows. Like, what is a vow made of? And it's still confusing to me. Because what is a vow made of? We take a vow, we're making this pledge to avoid doing something. Given a circumstance where we could do it, we're pledging, I will not do that deed. Is that a physical thing? Is that a mental thing? Is that one of those changing things that is neither physical nor mental? Like, what is it? The deed we're pledging to avoid, killing, that's a physical thing. But the pledge to avoid it, is that a physical thing? Is that just an idea in our mind? In which case, don't we have to be thinking about it for it to be an idea in our mind? In which case, right, we wouldn't have the vow except when we were thinking about it. And then it's like, well, I'm not thinking about not killing right now. I kind of am because I'm talking about it, but I'm not thinking about my other vows. Does that mean I don't have my vows? Well, I'm not there, right? It's like, it is confusing. And in the end, even after Jetsun Kappa goes through this explanation of the basic nature of vows, he's going to say, you know what? This is really confusing. So if Jetsun Kappa says that, I felt good about parking it on one of those shelves, of the, I'll come back to this later sometime. Like when I'm omniscient and I understand. But I can understand well enough to know why to work hard to keep my vows once I have them, right? Because of understanding this basis. Yeah. So I didn't write the Tibetan. I'm just going to read it for you. He says, De Young Lunak Le Sukchen Yin She Dupa. What that means is some believe that vows are physical, which implies that some believe they're not. And that's the important piece here. Vows are physical, they say, because the vows are about behaviors of body and speech. And those are things that we do with our physical body. So even the vow that we make to avoid those things, that vow has to be a subtle physical thing because the deed we're vowing about is a physical thing. They have to be similar enough to touch, similar enough to influence each other. I don't know. I don't really understand, to be honest with you. Technically, vows are karma. Technically, everything's karma. But if we think vows are karma, and I ask you, what's karma? Is karma a physical thing? Is it a mental thing? Is it aware? Or is it one of those changing things that's not all physical, not all mental, but is an existing changing thing. Oh yeah, that's where it fits, right? It's an idea, it's a concept, and it's got laws, right? It works the same way no matter what, because it's a concept. It's so slippery. This whole thing is really slippery. So different, if someone were to try to pin you down, you know, your vows, are they physical or are they mental? The way you wiggle out of that is you say, depends on what school you're talking about. And it's really true because of this differing belief about reality, what's meant by something real. In the lower schools, substantial physical things have reality. They're not self-existent because they're real, dependent upon their own causes and conditions. And when they have their causes and conditions, they become real things. And I honestly admit that I still walk around in a world like that, where these physical things are very real. And in that way, then, we need to kind of work out, is the vow a physical thing, something that has its own causes and conditions, and so when it does, its appearance then makes it real. Whether it's a real physical thing, solid physical, or subtle physical, or mental, it still has this reality, which we want it to have a reality, so that it can have the impact on our mind that avoiding that behavior is meant to have. So we understand that in this, depends on what school thing, there's 4 basic schools. And just for a quick review, the first level school is Vaibhashika, sometimes called Abhidharma, not meaning the text Abhidharma Kosha, but meaning higher knowledge. But meaning the detailists who study about all the details about existing things as Lord Buddha taught in the first turning of the wheel, so that they can better understand suffering and where suffering comes from. They believe that the vow is something physical, that it consists of shapes and colors moving around, not meaning out there is my vow of avoiding harming others looking like shapes and colors, but in me, as I'm moving through my day and I see the line of ants down the sidewalk, I see the ants, my vow helps me move my body such a way that I step over the ants instead of scuffing my foot through the line or coming down right on top of them. That action is the vow. And it was somehow physically present so that when I was in that situation, it would kick in and protect me from harming those beings. So a physical thing can be subtle enough that we can't see it with our eyeball, right? We know that. So just to say that karma can't be physical because we can't see it, touch it, feel it, is not enough to say, see, it can't be physical. It can be subtle physical. They say, this school says Vows are subtle physical matter, like oil permeates a sesame seed. If you cut a sesame seed, you can't pour a drop of oil out of it. But if you crush it on a paper towel, you'll get an oil stain. So you know that there was oil inside that sesame seed, even though you couldn't see it. So when we get our vows, you know, if we compressed ourselves onto a paper towel, our vow would make a oil stain like that. It's in us in that same way. They also say vows are like a fire in a forest fire. You know, once a forest fire like gets ignited, the wind blows and it just whips through the whole forest in an instant. It's called a conflagration, right? It just covers the whole thing. And in that same way, when our vows come on, they cover all of us. So, you know, the sesame seed doesn't have more oil on this side of the seed than that side of the seed. I don't think, maybe they do. But our vows permeate all of us like a forest fire conflagrates, and our vow permeates us like sesame seeds oil. So they go on to explain that when someone is there before the Kempo, on their vow-taking posture with their vow-taking hands, and they are bowing before the Kempo and repeating the words, somebody watching who, you know, who maybe couldn't necessarily hear what was going on, but that watching that person, what they're doing is communicating to others that they are preparing to receive vows. So if we're still watching them all the way through when the Campo snaps their fingers, we probably don't see some light come on inside them. But the fact that their karma is communicating to us, they are taking vows, we know that they took vows. They say that's part of the argument for how vows are physical. I don't get it, right? I get how that says vows happen, but not that they're physical necessarily. The karma is communicating is the key piece here. Now, that person whose karma just communicated to others, I got vows. 3 days later, you see them. Their karma is no longer communicating, I got vows, right? They're no longer in that position. The Kempo's not there, right? So we don't know whether or not they have vows because the vows are not physical in the sense that they change your skin color or turn your hair purple or something like that, right? We can't know because their karma is no longer communicating at that point. So something about vows is that it's a vow that doesn't communicate, meaning with others. Others won't look at you and know whether you've got vows or not. Even if you wear robes, right? If somebody's wearing robes, we're going to assume they have ordination vows, but we don't know for sure because we can't see them. If you've got an ordinary human mind like mine. All right. So this karma which communicates and karma which doesn't communicate, they call it physical matter which is communicating. Because it's through the physical matter that you are communicating. And then 3 days later, your physical matter is no longer communicating that. Right? So it's the physical posture and speech. All right. So that's lower school that believes the vows are physical. Let's take a break. Good time for a break. I will stop the share and pause the recording for the recording so that you know it's not broken. Pause. You're using that screen share. So lower school says vows are physical matter. Highest school, Madhyamaka Prasangika, which means middle way, implication school or consequence school. They say vows are subtle physical matter, but they believe it for a different reason. So remember, middle way refers to the walking the middle way between believing that things exist in the way they seem to exist and believing that if they don't exist in that way, they can't exist at all. If things don't have any nature, then what can they be? Middle way is things don't have any nature, and so they are what they appear to be, but not in the way they appear to be, which is in them, from them. Okay? Middle way. Things have no nature, but it's not that they don't exist at all. Called prasangika, implication or consequence, because they actually posit that you cannot describe the full meaning of things things have no nature, but it's not that they don't exist. You cannot actually explain that in a way that the person listening to you could understand it accurately. They have to go on to have the direct perception of that. And then when they're out of that direct perception, they'll try to describe it to somebody, but you can't do it that way. That rather one gives these absurd rejoinders to something someone has said or done that is designed for that person to go like, what? What do you mean by that? And they start thinking, and they will lead themselves to a conclusion that's more accurate than what you could have described to them. You know, like, you know, what do you think? Everybody experiences things in exactly the same way? Like, that's all you have to say to someone that would start them thinking, and they'd come to the conclusion of the pen thing. If they bothered, right, to go through it, which you wonder. So Madhyamaka Prasangika, highest school, things have no nature of their own. And so the way they appear to exist, they do exist according to the one experiencing them in that way, and they don't exist in any other way than that. So that means everything we experience is unique to the experiencer, even when we all think we're experiencing the same thing. And if we understood that, we would never fight about it, because it would be so clear to us that we're each having our own unique experience of it. And maybe we'd just be more curious. Like, what's this thing like for you, right? Maybe it's more fun than what it's like for me. Let me in on the secret there. So high school also believes that vows are something physical. But here's why. They say the vows is a conceptualization of the behaviors of the vows, which is a form. So to take a vow to avoid killing a human or a human fetus, that deed is a physical deed that would need to be done to break the vow. To keep the vow, there's a physical deed that we avoid doing in order to keep the vow. And even as we are conceptualizing, meaning thinking of that idea, like, given the chance, I will not, what? Shoot that guy. Given the chance, I will not. It's a conceptualization in our mind. Not that we have to be visualizing it at the moment until we get in a situation where we might do that deed. Then this conceptualization of our vow to avoid that deed would get very strong, of what it is we're going to avoid doing. That conceptualization of a physical deed, they say, is itself a physical thing. And it's, to me, it's like, no, it's not. No, it's not. It's the changing thing that's neither all physical nor all mental. But they say, no, it's not. The conceptualization of a physical deed, it has a physicalness to it. Meaning when we visualize or imagine something, the color, the shape, the smell, the taste, the touch, in our visualization, that's a kind of form. It's not a dream. It's a kind of form, very subtle physical form in the visualization. So in that same way, our conceptualization of having a vow to avoid this or that behavior, those conceptualizations are physical things. Not in the same way that lower school said they're physical. They're not like oil inside us, like a sesame seed. They're the idea that we have, the idea of physical behaviors, body and speech behaviors. The idea is physical, right? Subtle, physical. Yes, Lisa.
So here we are referring only about the body and speech deeds, because if
Yes,
we are talking about the mind, then they are per se mental,
correct,
then this explanation will not work,
correct.
correct?
Right, correct. And in Vinaya, all the vows are related to physical and speech behaviors.
But before you said in the definition of Jetson Kappa that
Right?
the
We'll,
basis,
right. We will be refraining ourselves from the states of mind that would lead us to doing those body, speech, minds. The vow themselves are related to the action of body or speech, not the mind.
Okay. Thank you, Lama.
Mhm. So just for completeness sake, the other schools, the other 2.5 schools, they believe differently about the vows' natures based on their understanding of how things exist ultimately. Did I write this? I did. So again, just for the seeds, Pongwe Sampa Gunchakpa Sabundang Che Yino She says, Jetsun Kappa. Yino She means some people say what they say, what he says, some people say, is that to give up the 7, Pongwe, Sampa, and their intention underneath them. I need to come back to Gunchakpa. Sabundang Che means a seed in the continuum. Gyun Chakpa, it's a continued intention in the mental seeds of the continuation of the mind stream. It seems redundant, but you have to say it like that. So some people say that the vow, individual freedom vows, are this mental intention to give up the physical deed along with the propensity for that deed that's carried along in the mental continuum. So they say, so see, it's not a physical thing. It's this seed in the mind that's continued along. So are mental seeds physical things? No. Are they mental things? Are they themselves aware? No. Are they changing things that are neither, but are still changing things? Yes. Right? Demen douche. So they are not physical things, say these people. So when we get the vow, we get these mental seeds that form for the intention to avoid doing those specific wrong deeds. And those are in the mind stream, even when you're not aware of it. But they're not physical matter, says this school. Let me see now. But now within that, there are 2 different positions where one side sides still says vow, well, no, wait, let me go back. So the other 2.5 schools say these vows are not physical. They're this mental imprint that's carried along in the mind stream. Lowest school and highest school both say they're physical things, but for two different reasons. So here, Geshe-la said, just to be complete, the sutras, also known as South Tantrika, say vows exist as a continued intention to avoid a certain thing. They act to have us think, oh, I shouldn't do that, when we're in a situation that brings up a vowed behavior. Third level school, mind only, Chitta Mantra. They also say vows must exist as a mental seed because they can be broken even in meditation. And it's like, wait, I thought we learned that when we're in deep meditation, we're making good karma. How can we break vows when we're in deep meditation? But their example is that suppose that you're the person whose job is to get the mattresses, right? To take the mattresses out and air them out every Thursday. And then, of course, it's your job to bring them back in when they're aired out. And you've taken the mattresses out and you've gone to do your meditation practice, and along comes a thunderstorm and all the mattresses get rained on because you weren't paying close enough attention to go get them before it rained because you were in meditation. They say that, right, if your job was a vowed job, you broke the vow in meditation because you didn't protect the mattresses somehow. Seems convoluted, but it must have happened. So they say, so see, those vows can be broken mentally. You're just in meditation. Again, Jetsun Kappa says in the end, this stuff is complicated. Thank you, Jetsun Kappa. Then independent middle way, Madhyamaka Sva Tantrika, they muddy the waters a little bit more. They say the physical restraining of body and speech as you conceive of them in your mind is what vows are made of. So they're playing both sides. The physical restraining of body and speech as we conceive of them in our mind is what our vows are. So once we have the 5 lifetime lay vows, for instance, and you know that you're going to refuse any alcohol that's offered to you, you know, right? You're going to refuse any alcohol that's offered to you. So you have in your mind this conception of that physical restraining of drinking the alcohol. I mean, technically you could accept the glass, but not drink it. You haven't broke your vow. That's what the vow is. Is that a mental thing? Is that a physical thing? Or is that the changing thing that's not quite both? Because the idea of this is what I'm going to do when I get there That's an idea, but it's not itself aware. The vow is not itself aware. We are aware of having the vow. So you can't really say it's a mental thing, but it is something that's carried along in the mind. Yeah. Basically the seeds, the mental seeds. And so then what's the difference between a mental seed of saying, oh, I'll just not kill, and taking a vow to not kill? You know, why is having a vow to not kill more powerful than just saying, I'll avoid it? You know, does that need to be on a physical level for it to be strong enough? Does a mental seed, are we sure that mental seed's going to ripen when we need it? When we're in the midst of being tempted to have the alcohol? Right? There's something about vows that increases the power of the avoidance of the behavior. That's going to come back to our motivation when we took the vow. Because that motivation is included in the seed planting, isn't it? I'm gonna vow to avoid such and such behavior because, you know, my world is nothing but pain and I'm determined to stop it. So the idea is, by keeping that vow, we reinforce that renunciation. And by reinforcing the renunciation, we keep the vow. And every time we keep the vow in a situation that we might have been tempted, we strengthen the vow. Right? And of course, every time we don't keep the vow in a situation where we're tempted, we damage the vow. Right? All the way up to turning the light out completely, depending on circumstances. All right. Geshe explained that Madhyamaka Tantrika and really higher school too, they say you can't say that the vow is simply our intention to avoid those behaviors, because we can have an intention to avoid a certain behavior and not have the vows to avoid the behavior. If the intention to avoid the behavior was the vow, just having the intention would give us vows, and it doesn't. Geshe said the point is, part of the point is, some Buddhists have vows and others don't. And what's the difference between them? So when we make ourselves a proper card-carrying Buddhist, we receive a formal refuge ceremony, and we get refuge advices to follow. They're often called refuge vows, but they're not vows. They're advices. So even as a proper card-carrying Buddhist, we don't have vows. We intentionally prepare ourselves and ask for vows once we have a certain level of understanding of morality, seed planting, emptiness in karma, to where we see that there's an advantage to making a commitment to avoiding certain behaviors because of the power that that vow has on our mind, has on every seed that's planted after we've received that vow. Years ago, when we were first at Diamond Mountain, it was a bunch of students at Diamond Mountain, and Geshe Michael, Lama Christie were teaching. We hadn't started Diamond Way yet. And we would gather some afternoons and somebody would like give a teaching, like the Kadampas. You teach that, I'll teach this. It was kind of fun. So Earl was teaching something about vows, and Venerable Phil, I call him Uncle Phil, he was there. Venerable Phil, he's been a monk for a long time. And we were talking about vows. And Phil said, once I recognized that when you have vows to avoid a certain behavior, you are gathering the goodness of keeping the vow. Every moment you are not doing that behavior, not just in the moments that you're confronted with doing that behavior, but every moment you're not doing the behavior, you are gathering the goodness of keeping your vow. So, like, are you killing a human or a human fetus right now? No. How about now? No. How about now? No. Right? So if we have this vow to avoid that, that goodness is accumulating. That's the power of vows. He said, once I understood that, taking ordained vows was a no-brainer. I wanted as many vows as I could get because of this principle. It shot a light bulb in my head too, because I hadn't understood it in that way. How powerful it is to have vows, but only if they're vows that you can live by. Okay. Otherwise, we're damaging vows, and maybe that's worse than having vows, right? Not, that'd be a good debate. Okay, so lastly, for this class, we reach these 8 categories of vows. So Jetsun Kapa's section where he just tells us the different kinds of freedom vows. So we're not talking about all vows, because there's also Bodhisattva and Tantra, but in the individual freedom vows, there are 8 different kinds that we can receive vows for. One is called Nyenne. Nyenne means the one-day vows. The one-day vows have 8 different components, 8 different behaviors that we will avoid doing for one 24-hour period. And the first time that we receive our one-day vows, we receive them from a preceptor, someone who has them, and we do the ceremony to get those vows, and then they teach us how to live our 24 hours keeping those vows. And the next day, when the sun comes up and you can see the lines on the palm of your hand, those vows go away by themselves. So you take the vows in the dark of morning, you live according to them very carefully for 24 hours, and at the end, they're done. There's Pratimoksha level one-day vows, and there are Mahayana level one-day vows that we'll talk about later. They are the same vows, the same behaviors, the same ceremony, but a different motivation for taking them. They're basically living like a monastic for one day. It's really not so hard. For the reason of purification, practice as an antidote, generating merit, right, are the 2 main reasons we would do a one-day vows ceremony. Once we've received them from a preceptor, we can give them to ourselves. You go in front of your altar and you do the ceremony, and Shakyamuni Buddha will grant you your 1-day vows for that day. And you learn how to do that. So second and third, Genyen Pa and Genyen Ma. Genyen means lifetime. So lifetime lay man's vows and lifetime lay woman's vows, they're the same vows. I'm not exactly sure why they give them two different categories, except that, the mind is different. So somehow the vow is going to be a little bit different, the substance of the vow. But they're basically the same, avoiding the same behaviors, avoiding killing a human or a human fetus, stealing anything of value, lying about our spiritual progress, spiritual realizations, adultery, sexual adultery, and I'm blanking out, intoxicating our mind or contributing to the intoxication of the mind of another. And then as an additional factor in our 5 lifetime lay vows is our refuge commitments. They're added in. We'll learn those more in greater detail. And Getzel Ma. Getzel means novice. Novice monk and novice nun. Saying my internet's unstable. I'm moving. You're moving. Okay. There are 36 vowed behaviors to be avoided at the Getzel level, and they're the same for monks and nuns again. Then there's a category of vows called Geloma, which is a 2-year period that a Getsoma, a novice nun, goes through before she can qualify for receiving her Geloma. And it's some additional vows that is designed to increase the goodness so that her full ordained vows can be strong. Why a monk doesn't have those two is anybody's guess. So then Gelong Ma and Gelong Pa are the fully ordained nuns' vows, Ma, and fully ordained monks' vows, Pa. For fully ordained nuns, there are 364 vows. For fully ordained monks, there's 253. And, our habit is to say, why do women get more? And the thing is, the more vows, the better. So when we understand it, it's like, yay, we get more. Because it adds to the power of our practice. And the vows have to do with how to live together in a group. And avoid mental afflictions. So at the time that this class was first taught in the 90s, it was still the case that the lineage for ordaining a full nun in the Tibetan tradition had been broken. That somewhere along the line, there was a nasty king who was very anti-Buddhism, and he set about to kill all the monks and nuns. He wanted to kill the tradition completely. And he managed to kill off enough nuns, not all of them, but enough such that they could not gather a quorum of nuns to be able to confer the full nuns' vows on whatever Gelukma or Getsulmas were left or that came into it afterwards. And so it was left like that for many generations, where if a woman wanted to get Mahayana, no, that's not right to say, wanted to get their full ordained vows, they would need to go outside of the Tibetan lineage to receive it. So there's Chinese lineage of full nuns vows. There's Tibet, or there's a Vietnamese lineage, there's Japanese lineage. There are other ways that you could get your fully ordained nun's vows, but then not within the Tibetan system. So that's generally what the modern day monks or nuns would do, is find somebody in a different tradition to grant them the full nuns, and then they would, go back to their Tibetan tradition. And then as our lineage was growing and Geshe Michael, Lama Christie were teaching, and there were people asking for ordained vows in Diamond Way, they granted a number of people the Getzel Pa and Getzel Ma, and then some of those Getzel Pas went on to get Gelung Pa after a couple of years, and the Getzel Mas were asking Geshe-la, please, please, please give us full ordained nuns vows or help us to get them. And I don't know how that it actually played out, but Geshe-la said yes one day to giving full nuns vows to Venerable Gelsay, I think was the first one in our line. And then the year later, or maybe more than a year, Kading, Venerable Kading and Upala received their full vows as well. So he gathered enough monks and nuns to have a quorum, and Geshe-la determined in his wisdom that the Diamond Mountain quorum, under he and Lama Christie's direction, could grant these women their full ordained nuns vows within the Tibetan tradition. And so, everybody is like, great, they're fully ordained. And outside of our tradition, there's some conflict, right? About who was he to do that when the holiness is the Dalai Lama doesn't do it, right? It's like our Lama is bold in his wisdom to do what's highest and best for the beings involved. So I don't know, I've never met any kind of conflict because I have no contact with any tradition outside of our own. But if I did, there would even be conflict about me having Getzel Ma vows and still apparently being married. because some people believe that you can't be married and be a monk or a nun. But there's nothing in the literature that says you have to get unmarried before you can take your ordination. It says you have to keep your vows. And if you can keep your vows and live together, I mean, that's what a spiritual partnership does. So to be true to the idea of the fastest method is to get vows, get a partner, see the partner as the holy angel. Why would you, as an ordained person, have to kick yourself out of a relationship, right, in order to get your ordained vows? Traditionally, you leave the home life. But then as that person who has their ordained vows goes on to their bodhisattva career and goes on to their diamond way career, they still have their individual freedom vows to keep as they are keeping their higher vows. And sometimes there's a conflict. And we'll study how to work out that conflict. One does not need to give up their lower vows in order to take higher vows. We keep our higher vows better by having lower vows. But it can cause distress in traditions that aren't so well trained in karma and emptiness, as Geshe-la has trained his students right from ACI, right from the monastic level training. So it's really quite extraordinary to see how this system was developed from Lord Buddha up to us, and how it's morphing in these modern times according to need. Okay. So next class, we'll go more specifically through these different kinds of vows, although we can't go into the details of ordained vows because we're not supposed to know them before we decide to take them. But we'll learn enough about them that if it sparks an interest, you'll know what questions to ask for later. Okay, so I'm done early because we didn't do the quiz, and that's fine. Unless there's any burning questions. Everybody okay? In which case, remember that person we wanted to be able to help at the beginning of class. We've learned a lot that we will use sooner or later to help that other in that deep and ultimate way. And that's a great, great goodness. So please be happy with yourself. And think of this goodness like a beautiful glowing gemstone that you can hold in your hands. Recall your own precious holy guide. See how happy they are with you. Feel your gratitude to them, your reliance upon them. Ask them to please stay close, to continue to guide you, help you, inspire you. And then offer them this gemstone of goodness. See them accept it and bless it, and then carry it with them right back into your heart. See them there, feel them there. Their love, their compassion, their wisdom. It feels so good, we want to keep it forever. And so we know to share it by the power of the goodness that we've just done. May all beings complete the collection of merit and wisdom, and thus gain the two ultimate bodies that merit and wisdom may. So use those 3 long exhales to share this goodness with that one person, to share it with everybody you love, and to share it with every existing being everywhere, everywhere. See them all filled with loving kindness, filled with the wisdom for why loving kindness brings happiness. And may it be so. All righty. Thank you so much for the opportunity.